Joining me now, Cameron Reddin from our Canberra Bureau. Cam, it was still a feature of politics today, the debate about what the Prime Minister told the Australian public. That's now been contested, I guess, by the Chief of the Defence Force. He's an admiral, so he knows, obviously, warship behaviour very detailed. He makes it clear that they did not have the notice. The notice, in fact, came via a Virgin airline pilot and the New Zealand Navy. Now, I made the point at the top of the show, the Prime Minister on that Friday was up in the Illawarra, with his candidates fundraising for Labor. Now, there's a pattern here for me. When we had that synagogue attacked in Melbourne, he flew to Perth for campaigning as well. He didn't go to Melbourne, he went off to campaign in Perth. And I get no sense that he prioritises security briefings from experts when these really serious events happen.
We have been playing catch-up for the last couple of days, it feels, Peter, trying to fill the blanks in with this. We got a bit more clarity through the Senate estimates process. It got a bit murky given the time frame of how late this notice was from China, exactly who figured out. You mentioned that we kind of half found out from New Zealand, half found out through the Virgin Airlines flight. So the timeline here is difficult because China clearly did break with those conventions. Normally a couple of days at least of notice are given here. But on this particular issue of the ships, you're right, this is a real political challenge for the Prime Minister, because keep in mind, one of the shining achievements that the Albanese government holds up, particularly on foreign affairs, is the stabilising of relations with China, the return of trade, and now that progress is being challenged on the eve of an election. So even once we get to the bottom of exactly what happened with the time frame here, the real question, I think, or the real challenge is what comes next beyond when these ships return to shore. They're currently south of Hobart, seemingly navigating the country or something like that. Is this the first lot of ships? Is it the last lot of ships? How does that relationship change? Those are the unknowns that we don't really know, even once those ships return home.
Yeah, you say stabilisation, that's Labor's claim, but you can stabilise anything when you subordinate yourself to the other nation state, and that's effectively what we've done all the way along, Cam. Remember, he was in the United States when we had our pilots hit with a laser, and he didn't announce that to the public, was not known to Australians until he hot-footed it on the plane and was in the air and could not then be questioned about it from the journalists. I mean, you're a journalist, you're going to be on the campaign trail with the Prime Minister. I think he should face some real heat in the election campaign on this stuff.
It'll be a test for sure, Peter, because this is the real first inkling, I suppose, that perhaps this might be the next battleground, or battleground's maybe not the right word, but it's at least the next test of all of this minister-to-minister relations, because, as we know, during the Morrison government, a lot of that communication dried up. We saw Penny Wong had the opportunity to raise this with her foreign minister counterpart over the weekend in South Africa. What's the next round of those conversations? What do they look like? Does that communication start to dry up a bit? We don't yet know, because this will be really the first test of pushback from the Albanese government. There might have been progress on trade. On this round of defence, I think it's now 3 incidents in the last 18 months, including, as you mentioned, those with the fighter jets. What happens now? Are there going to be more? Do we need to push back stronger? And at this time, Peter, on the eve of an election, it's pressure cooker moments like this for the Foreign Minister, the Defence Minister, and, of course, for the Prime Minister too.
Yeah, let's not forget that the iron ore they buy that we crow about, the trade relationship, is the same iron ore they turn into steel to make into these warships, then float past our front door and we have nothing to say about it. I'll leave that for a bit later on in the program. I'll come back to this issue. The dirt unit that's gone after Peter Dutton so hard this week over those shares from, 16 years ago, properties he's bought some 35 years ago. The Prime Minister, when pushed on this in the last couple of days, has said, nothing to do with me. These are questions for Peter Dutton. But we know it's got a lot to do with the Prime Minister and his office. Look at this footage from last night on the ABC. This is the Labor MP, Andrew Charlton. Have a listen.
What you're saying is the government had access to this information, was in possession of, that Anthony Albanese was in possession of this information before it appeared in the media. If it was of such enormous ethical importance as you suggest, why not release it that day? Why save it up?
I'm not sure it was saved up at all. I think it was released promptly.
Well, how promptly? When did you become aware of it?
Reasonably shortly before it was made available in the media.
I'm sorry, Mr. Charlton, but what's reasonably soon?
Very happy to answer this question. It would have been a matter of days or weeks, yeah.
Days or weeks? So as long ago as 7 days ago?
Could have been more than 7 days ago, yes.
More than 7 days ago. So the government has been sitting on this piece of information for at least a week, but could be more?
I'm not sure the government was sitting on it.
OK, I'm going to explain a few things here because it's really important for people at home. Andrew Charlton is the Labor MP in the seat of Parramatta. It's a marginal seat. Andrew Charlton was also Rudd's chief economist, so a key advisor in Kevin Rudd's office. He knows how a Prime Minister's office runs. He admits there that this dirt sheet on Peter Dutton comes from the Prime Minister's office. He makes that allegation very directly, and that it is a matter of days and weeks. Certainly he confirms there over a week that those documents were cooked up and sitting in the Prime Minister's office. Yet we've got the Prime Minister, Cam, out there in the last couple of days saying, as I said, nothing to do with him. I think this is getting dirtier by the moment.
Yeah, we're yet to see whether there was any personal involvement. Perhaps the office has gone about and done it their own way. We'll see. I'm sure there'll be questions asked more so over coming days, Peter.
Please.
I think where this one... Oh, maybe, I don't know, we will see. I haven't seen a smoking gun, for lack of a better word, but I suppose that's part of where the challenge is for Labor in landing this too, Peter, because we've even seen in the attempts to land this on Peter Dutton, the accusations themselves have been quite cagey because there are some obvious legal implications if you make certain claims publicly rather than just putting some documents out there and letting people make up their own minds. We've even seen in estimates over the last 24 hours, Peter, here's a blast from the past, Godwin Gretsch, and claims that he of Utegate fame was somehow involved in putting this package together, that there might have been emails about informing senior Liberals. We don't know where any of these lines will go. It's kind of just been putting some of the homework out there and letting people make of it what they will. We saw as well, Peter, in the last day or so, Peter Dutton kind of using this to say, well, hey, I'm a shrewd investor. I was just doing what any reasonable investor would do and making a similar claim on his properties, saying, look, I've done pretty well, and turning it into a story of aspiration. So that's clearly the line he wants to go down. We'll see where any of these avenues lead, Peter, but there is, I think, an inclination from some people to, once it gets a bit confusing and we get right into the details, some people's eyes just glaze over, but we're yet to see. We'll see if anything more comes of it.
Yeah, look, I'll make the point Kos Samaras made last night that he's sitting there in focus groups and none of this mudslinging is changing a single vote. And at the time that Andrew Charlton was sitting in Rudd's office, during the GFC, during the time that if there was insider information passed across to the opposition, he would know about it. Well, he's definitely not making that claim. And I was in the opposition leader's office at the time, and I don't have any recollection at all of any briefing on these sorts of issues. I know that Malcolm Turnbull got a briefing at one stage very early on in relation to the GFC. I am assuming, I don't know, but I'm assuming Joe Hockey got one. But Peter Dutton, he wasn't in the senior economic team at all. He was off as the health shadow. He did not get a briefing. I know that Shadow Cabinet was not briefed because I was the Secretary of the Shadow Cabinet. I think this is muckraking in the extreme, and if Kos Samaras is right, this is going to backfire on Labor.
It's a cost of living election, Peter, and look, people might look at this and they might see Peter Dutton saying, hey, I just made a good bet really on the stock market and it paid off for me, and then lean into the aspiration. But at the end of the day, is this going to swing a vote? Oh, you'd say unlikely. I mean, at the end of the day, it is the hip pocket people vote with, and whether or not a political leader has done all right for themselves probably isn't going to change somebody's mind.
Yeah, just quickly on that cost of living, data out from Westpac today shows that out-of-pocket electricity costs, they have risen by 31% since October, and they are forecasting a further rise of another 30% by the end of the year if those $300 subsidies from Labor are not extended. Well, I reckon in the campaign, that's exactly what the Prime Minister's going to have to do in order to buy votes, isn't he?
Well, the long expectation is, Peter, that they would extend this rebate. They haven't done it yet, probably, as you say, if they're going to, saving it for the campaign. The Coalition has said they don't want to match that. They believe it's just temporary help, that it could even be inflationary. I use this metaphor all the time. It's like pushing down on a mattress, where if you're going to artificially really lower the price of electricity with a rebate, at some point, if you take the hand off the mattress, it springs back up. Labor's hope was it wouldn't spring back to such a high level that inflation would have come down. Maybe it's not as bad as it could have been, but it will still be a jump. A bit like things with the low middle income tax offset, the Lamido, Peter. It's easy to give these things out, including rebates, really hard to take away, because even if you've helped in the short term, people feel like when they've run out, up go the prices and they don't really feel much better off, even if they are slightly in the margins.
You're not wrong. Cam, thank you.